I jolted awake at sunrise. Something about the crisp morning air felt off. My name is Ethan Mitchell, a third-generation resident of Parkside Springs, a quaint town nestled in Northern California. And for the past 8 months, I've also been its mayor. Yet hardly anyone in Parkside Springs knows just how feared I can be when crossed. Perhaps they see my modest clothes or friendly smile at local farmers markets and assume I'm just an approachable, small-town leader. In truth, I've clashed with more than one corrupt official, and I've outmaneuvered countless bullies disguised as community associations. That's why, when I glanced out my window that particular morning, I felt a stir of dread. Through the haze of early light, I noticed an unusual flurry of activity on my private meadow, a piece of land I inherited from my grandfather, a place where wildflowers thrived each spring and a gentle creek wound through century-old oaks. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I must be imagining things, but no. I heard the distant whir of generators, the thump of crates hitting the ground, and I even glimpsed tall, metallic stands rising up like skeletons of an event tent. Alarm prickled my skin. Without even finishing my coffee, I threw on a jacket and jumped into my pickup truck. The short drive from my home to the meadow was a blur. Dread coiled in my stomach with each passing second. That land was not just a sentimental patch of grass. It was a heritage site, protected under certain local environmental guidelines, and entirely under my name. Who, in their right mind, would dare set up any kind of structure there without my permission? When I pulled up to the old wooden fence that marked the boundary of my property, my jaw dropped. A makeshift gate had been erected, complete with a banner reading, "Lilyvale Estates HOA presents Grand Market Day." Dozens of trucks lined the grassy field. Men in neon vests were hammering posts into the ground, and crates of merchandise, furniture, electronics, produce stands, were scattered across what used to be a serene meadow. I climbed out of my truck, heart pounding. My mind flashed with questions. How did they get on my land? Which official gave them permission? Why didn't I receive any notice? It took all my willpower not to shout as I marched toward the nearest worker. He looked up from drilling a hole in the ground. "Stop!" I barked, voice shaking with anger. "Who gave you the right to be here?" He raised an eyebrow, seemingly unfazed. "I just follow the HOA's orders, mister. You'll have to talk to them." He pointed across the meadow to a group of people fussing over a large event map. I stormed away, boots crunching on the flattened grass. My head swam with rage and confusion. Lilyvale Estates HOA was a known neighborhood association in the southern part of Parkside Springs, an area full of posh houses, strict landscaping rules, and a reputation for meddling in local politics. But I'd never imagined they'd invade my family's land to build a massive open-air market. I was about to find out exactly how brazen they were, and how sorely they had underestimated the quiet man who actually ran this town. I wove through the clusters of half-assembled vendor booths. Men and women wearing Lilyvale Estates HOA badges scurried about, checking clipboards and snapping orders. The air smelled of fresh sawdust and churned-up soil. It made me sick to see my wildflowers crushed under temporary flooring. At the center of this madness, I spotted a tall woman in a tailored blazer, her auburn hair neatly pinned back. She seemed to radiate authority as she directed a group of workers to erect a large sign, "Welcome to the Grand Market, hosted by Lilyvale Estates, HOA." The sign towered over the meadow's gentle slope, an ugly testament to their gall. I stepped toward her. "Excuse me," I said, my voice still tight with anger. "Who's in charge here?" She turned, her eyes swept over me with a cool, assessing gaze. "I am," she replied, in a tone that barely masked her impatience. "My name is Cassandra Blake, president of Lilyvale Estates HOA. Can I help you?" "Help me?" The audacity made my blood boil. "Yes, you can help me by explaining why on earth you're setting up a market on my private property." Her expression flickered. For just a heartbeat, she looked genuinely surprised. Then a condescending smirk tugged at her lips. "There must be a misunderstanding," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "We have official permits, you see. The county records show this meadow as open community space. Wrong, I snarled, fists clenched at my sides. This meadow is part of the Mitchell homestead, privately owned by me. There's no such permit granting you the right to bulldoze it for your event. Cassandra's smirk deepened. I'm afraid we've verified all the necessary documents. If you have complaints, you're welcome to bring them up with the county. But for now, our grand market day goes on as planned. I nearly choked on my fury. I am the county lady, I wanted to shout, but I forced my voice to remain calm. My entire mayoral campaign hinged on my ability to handle such challenges diplomatically, though that had been more about local reforms, taxes, and community development, never expecting I'd have to fight a brazen HOA that had stolen my land. Stepping back, I took a moment to compose myself. You do realize this is illegal, I said quietly, and the repercussions could be severe. She tapped her clipboard, eyebrows lifting in feigned sympathy. My dear man, the Lilyvale Estates HOA is very powerful in this region. We've dealt with so-called property disputes before. Trust me, we always come out on top. She turned on her heel, clearly dismissing me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to ensure our vendors are set up properly. We have a grand opening scheduled for Saturday. We expect hundreds of visitors. I stood there, seething. The irony of her statement was almost laughable. She was the one who had no idea who she was dealing with. But I knew better than to blow my cover right then. I needed evidence of their wrongdoing, needed to see how far they'd go in claiming rightful ownership of my meadow, because once they realized I was the mayor, it would be far too late for them to backtrack. So I breathed in the morning air, forced a tight smile, and walked away. Let Cassandra Blake believe she was unstoppable. Let her continue building her grand market on stolen land, because soon enough, I'd turn the tables and show her just how feared the mayor of Parkside Springs could be. That same afternoon, I drove to City Hall, my official place of work, though no one on the Lilyvale Estates board seemed to recognize me yet. I'd always kept a low profile around certain social circles, partly by choice. Parkside Springs is a small enough town that most folks know each other by first name. But Lilyvale was a higher-end development that often had friction with local politics. So when I got elected mayor, on a platform of fairness, transparency, and preserving historic sites, I made it a point not to flaunt my power around them. I wanted genuine cooperation, not fear or manipulation. But Cassandra and her cronies had tested the wrong person this time. I marched up to the second floor, past the modest office with a plaque reading, Ethan Mitchell, Mayor, and headed straight to our planning department. I found Beatrice Flores, the head of land use records, sifting through a stack of zoning requests. B, I said urgently, I need you to check something for me. Lilyvale Estates HOA claims they have permits to hold an event on the old Mitchell Meadow. I need to see any document referencing that parcel. Beatrice glanced up, concern etched on her face. Sure thing, Mayor. Let me look. It took her only a few minutes of searching the digital registry to frown deeply. All I see is an old listing that designates that meadow as privately owned. No mention of it being rezoned or open for public use. There's nothing filed for an event permit either. I exhaled in frustration. So they never got approval from the city at all. She shook her head. Nope, we certainly wouldn't have authorized construction or heavy traffic on land that doesn't belong to them. That's a major liability. My mind raced. The Lilyvale HOA was either forging documents or claiming some archaic right-of-way. I asked B to print out everything we had on record for my meadow property boundaries, legal descriptions, and any environmental protections. She handed me a folder within the hour, stuffed with official documents and maps. After that, I paid a quick visit to the city attorney, Harold Graves, laying out the situation. He paled. They're building a market on your personal property, he repeated, adjusting his glasses. My goodness, that's a serious violation. I want to handle this carefully, I told him, trying to keep my anger in check. First, let's gather evidence of them trespassing and building structures without a permit. Then we'll weigh our options. An immediate injunction, or maybe another approach if they dig themselves deeper. Harold nodded, though he couldn't hide his shock. This is unprecedented. I know Lilyvale's HOA has a reputation for pushing boundaries, but this? Are you sure they have no idea you're the mayor? I let out a humorless chuckle. Cassandra Blake basically told me to take it up with the county if I disagreed with her. She doesn't have a clue. The city attorney frowned. Well, that ignorance might cost them dearly. I left City Hall with a plan forming in my mind. Lilyvale Estates was going to open this grand market soon. I'd let them proceed just enough to incriminate themselves thoroughly. Then, at the 11th hour, I'd slam them with the full weight of the law. Because this wasn't just about me and my stolen meadow. It was about sending a clear message that no one, not even a haughty HOA, could bulldoze the rights of local property owners in my town. On Wednesday, 2 days before their grand opening, I decided to see how far they'd progressed. My heart sank as I approached the meadow and saw an enormous archway proclaiming Lilyvale Mega Market, flanked by strings of banners that waved in the breeze. The wild grasses had been trampled or mowed down, replaced by rows of vending booths, wooden walkways, and even a small stage area. A security guard stood at the makeshift entrance, collecting a vendor admission fee from trucks rolling in with goods. Seething, I parked and strolled right up to the archway. The guard, an older gentleman with a Lilyvale HOA badge, held out a hand. "Sorry, sir. Vendors only until the market opens on Saturday." I pressed my lips together. "I'm not a vendor. I'm the landowner." "Let me in." He cocked his head. "The landowner? That's not possible. The HOA board told us this meadow is under Lilyvale's jurisdiction." That nearly made me snort. But I kept my composure, offering a tight smile. "Then maybe you should let me speak to them directly." Reluctantly, he radioed for someone to escort me. Moments later, Cassandra herself arrived, striding with the confidence of a monarch defending her castle. "Back again," she said, her tone dripping with mild annoyance. "Haven't you had your questions answered already?" "You'd like me to believe I have," I retorted. "But I've been in touch with the city attorney. You have no valid permit, no legal right to build this market on my property." She laughed, actually laughed as though I'd told a cute joke. "You truly think the city will come to your aid? Lilyvale's connections run deep. We've had this date set for months. You must be confused about your so-called ownership." I tried to remain stoic, but my anger was barely contained. "I'm telling you one last time, cease construction and remove all this equipment. You're trespassing, and you're in violation of multiple city ordinances." She stepped closer, her eyes flashing. "And I'm telling you, Mr. What is your name again?" I hesitated, then answered simply, "Ethan," choosing not to reveal my last name. "Well, Ethan," she said, arms crossing, "this market is going to be the event of the season. We have the mayor's office behind us. Trust me, you have no idea who you're picking a fight with." The irony almost made me burst out laughing. I forced calm. "Fine," I said. "I'll leave you to your illusions." With that, I turned on my heel, walking away before I lost control. It took every ounce of restraint not to yell something like, "You're the one with no idea who you're messing with," but I needed them to remain ignorant of my true identity just a bit longer. That evening, I convened with a few close allies at my home. My cousin Maureen, a fiery local journalist, and Chief Ramirez, our level-headed chief of police, sat around my dining table. I explained the fiasco in detail, showing them photos of the meadow's transformation that I'd taken surreptitiously. Maureen's eyes gleamed with righteous indignation. "This is huge," she exclaimed, flipping through the images. "The Lilyvale HOA is essentially stealing land from the mayor. Unbelievable. Think of the headlines." I held up a hand. "I want to handle this carefully. If we release a public statement too soon, they might spin it. We need a watertight case that exposes them beyond any doubt." Chief Ramirez nodded, brow furrowed. "We can gather official statements from the city's planning department. from your attorney, from local residents who know that Meadow belongs to you. Once we have enough evidence, we can shut down that market and, if necessary, make arrests. My jaw tightened. Yes, but I also worry about the vendors. Some might be unwitting participants. I don't want to ruin local businesses if they had no clue it was all illegal. Maureen tapped her chin. We can interview vendors discreetly, see how the HOA pitched them. If the board told them they had a perfect location with city backing, the vendors might be as surprised as you. That's a good approach, I agreed. We can protect the innocent while holding the real culprits accountable. Deep down, I felt the weight of my responsibilities as mayor. Ensuring justice had to be balanced with compassion for those inadvertently caught in the crossfire. That meadow was my private land, but by turning it into a public fiasco, the HOA had roped in countless small businesses and community members, many of whom simply wanted to sell their goods at a new marketplace. I couldn't blame them for wanting more opportunities to earn a living. Parkside Springs had seen a downturn in the local economy after a large plant closed last year. Still, the blatant disrespect for property rights, my property rights, was inexcusable. Cassandra Blake and her board members had to face consequences. They'd see that messing with my meadow wasn't a trivial matter. And if they doubted my authority, so be it. On Saturday, they would find out exactly who I was. I ended the meeting feeling both anxious and resolute. The hours ticked away as I mentally rehearsed the confrontation that would inevitably unfold. In the hush of midnight, I stood on my porch, staring at the distant silhouette of the meadow. The moon bathed the land in silver, and I whispered an apology to my grandfather's memory for letting it be defiled this way. Soon, though, I'd set things right. Saturday dawned bright and cool. A slight breeze carried the scent of fresh pine from nearby hills. Despite my fury, I had to admit the stage was set for a festive day. The sky was practically cloudless, and the hustle around the meadow was at fever pitch. By mid-morning, the so-called Lilyvale Megamarket officially opened its gates. Cars lined up on the roadside, families arrived to explore the stalls, and local shops displayed vibrant banners. From a vantage point on a small knoll about 50 yards from the entrance, I watched the crowd flow in. My heart clenched at the sight of my meadow. Once a peaceful haven, now trammeled by lines of vehicles and foot traffic. Still, I forced myself to wait, to let the event gather full steam and let the HOA believe their triumph was secure. Sometime around noon, I spotted Cassandra amid the booths. She wore a crisp white blazer, greeting visitors with a triumphant smile. An assistant hovered at her side, presumably updating her on sales or vendor feedback. Photographers snapped pictures of the bustling crowd, capturing the bright streamers and the array of products on display, from artisanal cheese to handcrafted jewelry. I sighed. It was a shame such a well-organized market was built on pure deception and trespassing. I recognized some local vendors from the usual town markets, people who had always operated within city guidelines. They had no clue they were pawns in an HOA's illegal land grab. That stoked my resolve. Around 1 p.m., I strolled into the fray. A few people recognized me from City Hall or local events offering friendly waves, but for the most part, no one imagined I was anything more than an inquisitive shopper. I studied the booths, scanning for any sign of official city permits. None existed. All signage referenced Lilyvale Estates, HOA authority, as though that carried any actual weight on my meadow. I found Cassandra near a beverage stall, sipping iced tea. She smirked when she saw me. "Come to enjoy our market, Ethan?" Finally decided to stop making a fuss. I forced a pleasant smile. "Yes, I thought I'd see how your big day turned out." My voice was even. "Impressive turnout." She nodded in mock graciousness. "Indeed. This will be the talk of Parkside Springs. Mayor or no mayor, everyone loves a grand marketplace. We're unstoppable now." I nearly choked at the irony. She had unknowingly said, "Mayor or no mayor," as if the actual mayor might not be on her side. But that didn't matter. My stomach twisted with a dark amusement. "You have no idea," I thought. I gave a friendly nod, then drifted away, heart pounding. The moment was close at hand. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Chief Ramirez. "Ready when you are," he replied. "We're standing by." Yes, the time had come. Cassandra wanted the spotlight. She was about to get it, but not the kind she imagined. At exactly 2 p.m., Chief Ramirez and two uniformed officers arrived near the market's entrance. They parked their squad car conspicuously, lights flashing, but no sirens. Curious attendees paused, some stepping aside to watch. A hush rippled through the crowd as the officers walked in, scanning the booths like they were searching for someone specific. I stepped forward, meeting Ramirez halfway. He gave me a respectful nod, though we both maintained an air of formality for the onlookers. "Is the property owner here?" he asked, loud enough for nearby vendors to overhear. I lifted my chin. "Yes, I'm here, Chief. I'm the landowner, Ethan Mitchell." A few murmurs spread through those within earshot. "And I'm also the mayor of Parkside Springs." Gasps erupted in the immediate circle of bystanders. Some recognized my name. Others were in disbelief that the mild-mannered Ethan was actually the mayor. I spotted Cassandra striding toward us, confusion etched on her face. I raised my voice so the gathering crowd could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt your shopping, but Lilyvale Estates HOA has built this market on my private meadow without any legal authorization." Cassandra's eyes widened in shock. It was as though she'd been slapped. "You? Mayor? This can't be real." I pressed on, ignoring her sputtering. "They have no permit from the city, no right to claim this land, and as mayor and rightful owner, I must inform you that continuing this event is unlawful." A stunned silence followed. Vendors looked around in confusion. Some turned to Cassandra for an explanation. She scrambled to find her composure. "This is a misunderstanding," she cried, brandishing a sheaf of papers from her clipboard. "We have documents showing Lilyvale Estates has extended community rights to this meadow. We verified it with local authorities." Chief Ramirez stepped up. "Ma'am, we have cross-checked every official record. Those papers are invalid. We see no evidence of city or county approval." People in the crowd began to whisper, cameras on their phones rolling. Cassandra's bravado wavered. She tried once more, a desperate edge to her voice. "But we were assured by certain county officials that—" Her sentence withered under the harsh reality. My heart pounded with adrenaline, yet I kept my demeanor calm, projecting the authority she had so foolishly overlooked. "All vendors, please be aware," I announced. "You have until the end of today to vacate my property. No penalties will be imposed on those who leave willingly. But Lilyvale's HOA board must dismantle every structure and remove all equipment. If they fail to comply, they'll face legal consequences." I glanced at Cassandra. She looked pale, shock and outrage mingling on her face. Then, in a final effort to salvage her position, she hissed, "You can't do this. We have a right to hold events that benefit the community." I met her glare steadily. "Not on private land you don't own, and certainly not in defiance of city statutes." Then, softly enough that only she could hear, I added, "You had no idea I was the mayor. That was your biggest mistake." The ripple effect was immediate. Some vendors began hastily packing up their goods, not wanting any trouble with the law. Others hesitated, unsure if Cassandra could still salvage the situation. Meanwhile, the crowd, the shoppers, were torn between curiosity and confusion. A few grew angry, blaming the HOA for misleading them. Cassandra tried to rally her board members. I saw her speaking in frantic whispers to a cluster of well-dressed individuals, presumably Lilyvale's top brass. One man in a suit gestured angrily, pointing in my direction. Another woman covered her face, looking mortified. They must have realized they were dealing with not just a property owner, but the mayor. A mayor with full knowledge of city procedures and the power to enforce them. I gave them space, letting them decide how to handle the embarrassment. My job wasn't to gloat, but to ensure the meadow was restored. Chief Ramirez instructed his officers to stand by, making sure no one escalated into conflict. The tension was thick, like a storm cloud about to burst, but the presence of law enforcement kept it from exploding into chaos. Some local reporters, who'd been drawn by the promise of a big new market, now swarmed me with questions. Mayor Mitchell, did you know about this event? How do you plan to handle the trespassing charges? Is Lilyvale Estates HOA facing legal action? I took a breath and addressed them calmly. I discovered the unauthorized construction only a few days ago. My team verified that Lilyvale Estates HOA had no legal claim or permit. We're requiring them to dismantle the market immediately. Further legal steps will be determined by the city attorney. For now, I urge everyone to respect private property and city regulations. In the background, I caught sight of Cassandra dropping to a bench, her head in her hands. She must have realized how thoroughly her plan had collapsed. I almost felt a twinge of pity. Almost. She had marched on to my meadow with arrogant confidence. Now she had to face the reality of her misdeeds. If she'd approached me openly, we might have negotiated a community project that aligned with city codes, but her approach was all about stealth and power, both of which had backfired spectacularly. Harold Graves, the city attorney, arrived on scene shortly after, conferring briefly with Chief Ramirez. Then he approached Cassandra, delivering an official cease and desist notice. The swarm of cameras captured her furious expression, the hush of onlookers bearing witness to her downfall. The once lively market now felt like a funeral, stalls closing down amid murmured apologies and shocked faces. By late afternoon, trucks that had arrived loaded with goods were leaving, empty or half-packed. The roaring generators clicked off, leaving the meadow in uneasy silence. In the distance, the battered wildflowers, once overshadowed by booths and banners, peeked through the trampled grass. I felt a surge of relief and sorrow. Relief that justice was served, sorrow for the damage done to the land my grandfather had loved. Over the next week, the drama continued behind closed doors at City Hall. Cassandra and her board members tried every avenue to avoid responsibility, claiming they'd been given false information by some unnamed county official. But no such official stepped forward. Their story crumbled under scrutiny, leaving them with no choice but to admit they had never properly verified property ownership. Harold Graves pushed for legal action, citing trespassing, environmental harm, and building code violations. The police chief collected statements from vendors who confirmed they'd been assured the HOA had full rights to the property. Some vendors even threatened to sue the HOA for misleading them and causing loss of revenue when the event abruptly ended. Meanwhile, I maintained a public stance of calm professionalism. In press statements, I emphasized that this was a clear violation of private property rights, that no one was above the law, not even a powerful HOA. The local newspaper praised the city's swift intervention under my leadership, though a few editorials questioned whether I should have intervened sooner. That was fair criticism, but my strategic patience had been necessary to ensure the HOA incriminated themselves completely. The Lilyvale board tried to request a private meeting with me to resolve matters amicably. I agreed, sensing they might want to negotiate a settlement for the damage they caused. When we met in a conference room at City Hall, Cassandra arrived looking more subdued than ever. Gone was her haughty demeanor. She clasped her hands nervously. Another board member, a graying man named Thomas Green, did most of the talking, evidently hoping to find a quick fix. "We understand we made a serious error," he said, clearing his throat. We'd like to propose compensation for the usage of your meadow to avoid further conflict." I watched them carefully. Compensation won't undo the environmental damage, nor will it absolve you of forging or misrepresenting official documents. Cassandra tried to hold my gaze. "We're prepared to replant the meadow, restore it, and will pay restitution for any claims from vendors." She took a shaky breath. "Mayor Mitchell, please. You must see, we intended only a beneficial event for the community. Things got out of hand." I almost laughed at the irony. "That's a hefty spin. You trespassed, defied local laws, and put on a massive market, all while ignoring the true owner." I'm willing to consider a settlement that covers environmental restoration, plus a public acknowledgement that you overstepped. But the city attorney might still pursue charges. He has the final say on the legal front." They exchanged worried glances. Thomas Green nodded. "We'll cooperate fully," he promised. "We'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I ended the meeting with no illusions about their sincerity. They wanted to salvage their reputation more than anything, but at least they recognized the severity of their wrongdoing. My meadow might eventually heal, but the fiasco would remain a black mark on Lilyvale Estates' HOA's record for years to come. In the following month, as legal proceedings churned on, Lilyvale Estates HOA issued a formal apology. They admitted misrepresenting their rights to the land and pledged to finance a comprehensive restoration plan for the meadow, replanting native grasses and wildflowers, repairing the creek bed where heavy equipment had caused erosion, and funding ecological surveys to ensure the habitat wasn't permanently damaged. The city attorney struck a deal that included a hefty fine. Part of that fine went toward local community initiatives, as well as reimbursing vendor losses from the botched market. The Lilyvale board faced the humiliating task of explaining their actions to their own residents, many of whom were outraged by the reckless gamble that had tarnished their HOA's name. Meanwhile, I quietly visited the meadow each weekend, watching as conservation specialists replanted seeds and monitored the soil. Though it would take time, I could already see signs of renewal, tiny sprouts of green among the flattened ground, the creek's water running clearer than before thanks to newly added vegetation. My grandfather's memory felt closer with each sign of recovery. The townspeople, for their part, rallied around the story. Some called it the Great Meadow Dockle, an example of how no one in Parkside Springs, no matter how prestigious, could trample on another's rights. Local businesses expressed relief that they wouldn't be punished, and many invited me to see if we could plan a legitimate city property fair in the future on a proper, publicly approved space. The fiasco ironically sparked a conversation about hosting more communal events in Parkside Springs, with official backing and transparent processes. In a twisted way, the illegal market had reminded folks of the town's need for community gathering spots. As for Cassandra Blake, she resigned from the Lilyvale HOA presidency under a cloud of disgrace. Rumor had it she considered moving out of Parkside Springs altogether, her pride too wounded by the scandal. She sent me a short letter, apologizing personally for dismissing me that day, acknowledging I'd shown remarkable restraint in not shutting down the event sooner. I harbored no sympathy, but accepted her apology in a single, polite sentence. "I hope this teaches you the value of honest governance." On a balmy spring morning, about 2 months after the fiasco, I walked the meadow alone. The sun's warmth bathed the land in a gentle glow. Tiny wildflowers peeked from the soil, the creek babbled contentedly, and the distant hum of traffic on the main road felt like a faint echo. Standing there, I recalled the moment Cassandra had smugly told me to take it up with the county, never dreaming that I already was the county's highest authority in town. The memory brought a wry smile to my lips. I knelt, running my fingers through the young grasses, and murmured a quiet promise to my grandfather that I'd always protect this place. It had endured a violation, but in the end, justice prevailed. The unscrupulous HOA had discovered the truth too late. The mild man they disrespected was in fact the feared mayor of Parkside Springs. And yes, I held all the power they never realized could topple their grand plans in a heartbeat. Standing up, I surveyed the meadow with renewed purpose. One day, I thought, perhaps we'd hold a genuine market or festival here, one that respected the land and complied with every city rule. A place where community could gather in harmony, not in arrogance or deceit. I breathed in the fresh air, letting the sunlight fill me with optimism, because if there was one lesson from this ordeal, it was that in a town like Parkside Springs, people banded together to uphold truth and fairness, even if it took the mayor revealing his hand at precisely the right moment to set things straight.